All right. Hello, everyone. Been a couple weeks. I was at Laracon and then family vacation. So to kind of make up for the missing Wednesdays, I thought I would do a week's worth of streams. Now, I know it's Tuesday. The girls didn't start school until today. School didn't start back until today. So we're going to do Tuesday to Friday, and what I want to work on is building a Dusk to the new Pest v4 browser tests. I don't know if they have a specific name for them, I mean, Dusk is the Laravel browser test. So I don't know if there's like a code name or a specific name for them. I think they're just called Pest Browser Tests. It uses Playwright underneath, so it's kind of like a different engine underneath, but based on what based on what Nuno demoed at Laracon, it seems like the API is pretty similar. And that just kind of course, me, two things. One, me being pretty public as well about kind of getting frustrated with Dusk. Not so much the Dusk API, but just the fact that Dusk, it's a very brittle thing. And in fairness, Playwright might be as well. But it just seemed like a first-party package that kind of hasn't gotten a lot of love over the years. It was kind of built, and then it was done. It was kind of feature complete, so to speak. And I totally get that it is probably feature complete. I mean, you're not doing more. There's not new interactions with the browsers, right? It's like press. That's all you're ever doing. Press, click. Hover. You're not doing additional interactions with the browser, so there's no reason to change, the feature set. But it just seemed like for me, Dusk, my CI Dusk tests would pass, sometimes, and then they just suddenly quit passing. And it was either GitHub Actions CI bumped like the underlying version, or just 1,000 reasons why kind of Dusk suddenly quits working. And it's really like, do you want to go spend the half of a day or more to figure out why Dusk quit working? And again, not to knock on Dusk, but I've been pretty public about my Dusk woes from time to time. And Nuno was pretty blunt about them as well on stage at Laracon US. And then two, of course, being an automation guy, when he says things like, oh, the API is pretty much the same and this, that, and the other, it just got me thinking, well, let's convert. Let's convert from Dusk to this new thing if the API is that close. So we're going to build a shift. All that is to say, we're going to build a shift to do just that. And kind of the only other pest shift I built, the pest converter, I also live streamed kind of the initial foundation, building the initial foundation for that in like a week's worth of live streams. That too was actually in August, a couple years ago. Now, Pest itself actually has an internal tool that they call Drift. Whatever on the name there. I haven't used it because I don't convert a lot of test suites from PHP Unit to Pest, to be honest. I do think from what I've heard, it does a pretty good job of like ripping out the core skeletal structure, like the skeletal structure of your PHP unit tests, and converting them to Pest. There are still people that buy the Shift's Pest converter though. So clearly the one that Shift has, must be doing a little bit better in some regard if people are still coming to use it. So to that point, let's make a good one. Let's make a good one for Dusk, from Dusk to this, because I would actually use this. I've griped about Dusk for a very long time. I would use this. So that's my little 5-minute intro to catch everybody up. So what we're going to do from now on is get into the code. So we're starting at the very, very beginning here. As you can see, I'm in the Shift project. I'm on the master branch. So very first thing, let's cut a new branch, right? Let me Let me get this piece of dust off my keyboard here since I haven't been in the office for like 2 weeks. Okay, so let's do git checkout -b pest browser tests. Okay, so I've talked about building shifts before. I won't go through this in a whole lot of detail necessarily, but here's kind of the 3 things we're gonna do. So let's bring up, like, I think I can bring up like a scratch pad here. Scratch. Don't they have a scratch file? Oh, files. Scratch. Thought they had like a scratch. I think this probably still has like some old school stuff in it. It does. There we go. Okay, so let's just start a new one here. So like pest browser test converter. All right. So what we need to do is first we need to create the new shift. All right. We need to register the tasks. We'll have to build out the shift structure, let's call it. Create test fixtures. This might be a little bit later. And then we'll basically, like, these are all pretty high level, but we'll basically like increment. This kind of comes with it. And then we'll kind of, let's just say, iterate on individual tasks. Okay, iterate. All right. So this is kind of high level. I think we'll probably try to do this today. I don't think this will take that long. It's kind of just like, this is kind of the tedious infrastructure bit. This is like the artisan make command, kind of stuff where you're kind of punching out all the classes that you're going to need. Now, unfortunately, I don't have something like, this isn't a Laravel application. This is a PHP library. Shift is just a PHP library of custom, native PHP code. Of course, I use, packages, composer packages. It has dependencies and whatnot, but like, it's not a Laravel app is the point. So I don't have the luxury of artisan make new, and I can't use something like Blueprint that will give me, more code. So this is all kind of by hand. I don't make new shifts very often, so I've never made like a shift generator. There's just kind of no value there. I didn't automate the automation, right? Okay, so to kind of like give this a little bit of backstory here. Okay, so to create the new shift, this is like a factory pattern. All right, and again, I've talked about this in depth in previous streams, so I'm just gonna kind of label these and then we're just gonna go do it. This task is kind of like a registry. It's really just gives you the metadata about the shifts and then the individual tasks that gets run. And this, you can kind of consider this a pipeline, right? And then building out the structure. This is just like, this is just like file system stuff here is really what I'm after. But like, as far as kind of like each of the patterns that are kind of used inside of here, there's a factory which you call with a SKU, and it returns, the registry class, the shift class for that. And that in turn has information about where files are located, version numbers, the task pipeline that ultimately kind of gets iterated over and ran. So again, we'll kind of get this far today, and we'll go from there. I think tomorrow we might map out pseudocode some of the individual tasks that we're gonna need, but I think that'll be what we really get into tomorrow. Of course, if you have any questions about structure or whatnot, just hit me up in the chat. But yeah, cool. Hey Jeffrey, how's it going? Mateus, what's going on? Is that Mahmoud? Anyway, hello. Sorry for my American pronunciation of names. Okay. So there is a shift factory, aptly named. And as we can see here, just a huge match statement, which effectively returns a shift. Now, I think these actually, I'm noticing, we're going to take the opportunity to do a little refactoring here. Again, shift is like a 10-year-old code base. So, you know, there's some judging we can do here. It's missing its type hint. So let's add one. All of these are shiftable. They implement the shiftable contract. So this returns a shiftable. So we can fix that. And I think it throws an exception if it doesn't find something. So we can see here we have, like, you know, 50 is the Laravel 5.0 shift, and 58's the Laravel 5.8 shift, all that kind of stuff. So down here somewhere we have a pest converter. Yeah, PP for pest converter. So let's do this like, I'm going to call this DC. I'm going to call this the Dusk converter, I think. But I'll put it down here like by pest. So we'll call this the Dusk converter. And the question now is, do I put it in vanilla PHP? Or is it technically a Laravel? Should it be under the Laravel shifts namespace? It is Laravel Dusk. I mean, theoretically, you could... No, you can't use Dusk outside of a Laravel application. No. Yeah. You can't use Dusk outside of it. You can use Pest outside of a Laravel application, so that's why Pest is under the PHP namespace. It's general. Anyone can switch from PHP unit to Pest. It's not Laravel specific. I'm going to go so far as to say Dusk is Laravel specific, so I'm actually going to put this under the Laravel namespace, and I'm going to move it up with the rest of the Laravel stuff. All right, we'll use PHP Storm to help us create this class, hopefully in the right location. And then I'm just going to copy from one of these other ones because it's much, much easier. So let's just copy from the most modern Laravel 12 shift, and we'll kind of go through this. So let's change this to the... oh, we already have the name. Let's fix it. This is called rename class to that. Cool. All right, hopefully that didn't rename my other one. No, it didn't. Okay, so again, we implement this shiftable class, which basically just, again, makes sure that you have all these kinds of things, all these kind of metadata things about how the shift actually gets run. So its type is going to be Laravel, requires composer. Do we require composer? I mean, we're probably going to change, we would expect to change dependencies and so forth inside of Composer, potentially adding Pest and doing these things. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say true. All right, what's the name of this? For now, I'm just going to call this the Dusk converter. Not a huge fan of that name, but I don't like, you know me, I don't like to get stuck on naming this early in the game. And then normally I name these their version number, 11.x, 12.x, yada yada. We're just going to call this its SKU, so we'll just call it the DC. Get resource path. This should not be needed. What the resource path is effectively, and again, think of upgrade shifts. The resource path points to where I might get core project files when I'm dropping them into your application. So for example, Laravel 11 introduced the new bootstrap app.php file. That would come from this resource path. It is nullable. I really shouldn't have any, to my knowledge right now, I don't think I have any resources that are going to get added into the project. So I'm actually going to make this null for now, and we'll just go from there. And then this version will actually be, I think this version is actually going to end up being the Pest version. I think it's going to end up being the Pest version. But again, for now, I'm going to make this null, just to kind of point out that I don't know where it is. I don't want to presume any information here this early on. And now we're down to basically this get tasks. This is kind of this, again, this registry, this like metadata class of what the shift is and kind of the things that it needs. And then you get into this task, which effectively returns an array of all the individual tasks that are going to get kind of ran through the pipeline. So we copied this from the Laravel 12.x shift. Let's just kind of run through this within the Laravel 12 context. Basically, it checks to see if you need to be the slimmer, checks if you should consolidate namespaces. It runs code formatting to normalize files. And then it does some basic adoptions of certain things to modernize your code base. And then finally we kind of get down in here. 12 updates some core files, the core files that changed in 12, adopt PHP attributes, adopt, the gate facades, new modern things that happen that are 12 specific. But you can see the point here is that these tasks kind of come from everywhere. They're not only ever 12 specific. I built it this way, and this has proven to be really, really nice over time, because a lot of shifts actually might end up using this optional to null safe. In fact, it's even an individual workbench task you can run, so the namespace has changed. So the nice thing here is that this is very much the idea here that these individual atomic units of tasks, this individual little micro piece of automation that's run, but putting them all together, you can do really big things. It's kind of like the Unix, command kind of paradigm, right? ls is a very simple command, but you can pipe it to other commands and start to do really, really complex things from these very simple, change directory, list files, move, find. All of these tiny little atomic commands get put together to do really big things. The same concept is kind of here in this pipeline. So I try to make these things relatively atomic in the case that they might be able to be reused. So we don't have any of these right now. The only one that we might have is, I think there's one for under development. Yeah. Let me bring this one in here. And I forgot, totally just didn't realize. We just give the class, yeah. Okay, so it's just reference to class that gets newed up and instantiated as they're run. So there'll definitely be this under development type thing here. Now, again, I don't want to get into today the specifics of the actual conversion. Going back to our scratch pad, there's our new shift. We've put it in the factory. We've created the task. We need to kind of go and build out some of the structure. So we need at least one simple task here. So what I'll do is I'll just do just to start building out the structure. We'll do Laravel. Let's make this the Dusk converter. I probably should work on this name. Otherwise I'm gonna have to do a bunch of renaming later. I mean, it is the Dusk converter. It's converting. The Dusk converter kind of does it. It's in my mind, it's a little bi-directional, right? Am I converting to Dusk or am I converting from Dusk? I don't know which direction I'm heading with Dusk converter. Typically, though, in the context of shift, when I've used the word converter, you're converting to the thing that's being named. So for example, pest converter, it's not called PHP unit converter, it's called pest converter. So that's kind of why Dusk converters break in my mind a little bit here. Let me get a drink of water and think if there's a better name. Without knowing what Pest calls it, I mean, they just call it browser test. I don't want to call it browser test converter. And Pest Browser Test converter is just it's a bit long. Naming, so hard, right? Anyway, let's do detect. There's typically, most of the time in these I have a miscellaneous class. Did I spell that right? Seems like it's spelled right. Maybe, maybe not. I typically have kind of like a miscellaneous. This is like the cleanup task if there's any comments to leave or anything else. So let's see if it'll make this the way I want it to. And just to work on these for a second, this extends task, and we can add these method stubs, and there we go. All right, so that needs a to-do. That's fine. Let's make sure the namespace here looks good. So shift task Laravel Dusk converter. Yeah, okay, looks good. Looks good. All right. So we definitely are going to need more tasks there, but I just kind of wanted to build out. I just kind of wanted to build out the skeleton of the file structure. So let's build out a little bit more. And then we might take a look at the pest converter to get ideas of what tasks are coming up so I can do some offline research. Yeah, naming is hard. Okay, so we've got this. What else do I need? We need these other things too. We need this. So let's go make that. Typically, where is that? Resources. Views, Laravel, yeah, and we need a DC. All right, let's jump in DC, and we got a pull request. Okay, this pull request contains, yeah, this was the April Fool's one, AF, April Fool's. Okay, happy April Fool's from Shift. Okay, we probably want a better example to pull from. The April Fool's one is a little funk. All right, here we go. Let's take the one from Laravel 12. Okay, so this pull request includes the changes for converting your Laravel Dusk tests to Pest Browser Tests. Again, this will get refined, but let's just kind of dial this in a little bit. All right, period. Cool. Feel free to commit. This is kind of the standard nomenclature here, so feel free to commit any additional changes to the branch, blah, blah, blah. Before merging, you need to check out the branch, review all the pull request comments, run composer update. We probably will need to do something like run npm update. Again, that could get customized. Clear any config, route, or view cache. You probably don't need to worry about that since we're not upgrading actual Laravel versions. And then it would be like, this would be like run your browser. Run your browser tests. And maybe this will be something like, you know, PHP artisan, not Dusk, but it would be like PHP artisan, I guess, test. I don't know if he has a different one or not. I forgot from the demo. Yeah, okay. So the rest is just kind of like an upsell for support. Okay, that's a good enough start there. Okay, what's wrong with this? Match arm is a duplicate of 12 arm. Oh, did you fucking change that? PHP Storm, come on. I was worried it renamed that crap. Did it do that everywhere? Let's find out. You did, didn't you? You bastard. Sometimes if you copy a file, I've noticed this in PHP Storm, and I understand why it's doing this, but it seems like it could get this right. Just as someone that's in the automation refactoring business, it seems like it could do better with this. When I copied that Dusk file and I renamed the file to match the file name, it goes through anywhere it finds like a string reference instance to the Laravel 12 shift and renamed it all. So like, that's not what I wanted it to do. So let's do a quick whip commit here. So let's just review. We'll take the opportunity to review. So we did add some typing there. I'm cool with that. And we added in our new DC Dusk converter. Now, here's where I don't want any of this stuff. It's going to rename all of this in my tests. I don't want any of that stuff. So no. Don't do it. Yeah, nowhere else should we have a reference to the Dusk converter, so we're going to say no there. Lots of no's. Almost there. Maybe. I'm about to just say Q. We got to be getting towards the end. Let's say D, 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 D. None of these. So D is basically like none. None in that file. Okay, so everything else is a brand new thing. So yeah, okay, so now what I'm going to do is git add -I just to get my untracked. There we go. All right, so this will ignore all the 12 stuff. We'll git whip this. And we should just have that and we'll nat. All right. Okay, so we only should have added. All right, cool. And we don't need those because they're not being used right now. That's fine. So we'll git append that. Okay, so if we do a git show, we only have our new pull request for the file structure. We have the type hint, the registry, and then the class itself. And the miscellaneous class, which has nothing in it. But that starts to build out some of the file structure. So very simple stuff there. Okay, so there's a few more things we need to do. There's a few more things we need to do for the actual file structure. We don't have any tests. We don't have any tests yet, so I'm actually gonna leave. I'll actually leave that alone. There's something else in the file structure I'm missing. We made the pull request. We don't have any resources, so yeah, that might be what I'm thinking of. We don't have test fixtures yet. That would be another thing on the file system we would need to do, but we don't have any test fixtures yet. So I'm just gonna wait till we have test fixtures and we'll build that out because PHP Storm can probably help generate those classes and namespaces. We're gonna leave it called the. Oh, here I called it the Pest Browser Test Converter. It's such a long name. It's probably what it should be called. It's probably what it should be called. I have a Lumen, you know what? I have a Lumen converter. Lumen to, oh, I call it the whole thing, Lumen to Laravel shift, see? This is one of the earliest converters I have. And I actually call this Lumen to, I made the direction specific, see? Lumen to Laravel shift. I didn't use the word converter. Well, I do here. Internally, like, it kind of doesn't really matter what the hell I call it. I'm fine calling it the Dusk converter, and then in the marketing side, that's not ideal, but on the marketing side, calling it Pest Browser Test. Pest Browser Test Converter. Pest Browser Test or Tests? What do I call it here? Test. Yeah. We'll see if there ends up, when Nuno releases the documentation for this, we'll see what he calls it in the docs. I think he just calls it Pest Browser Test. So if the mismatch in the name annoys me ever, I'll just rename this class to Pest Browser Test Converter. But again, there's already kind of precedent where things don't line up exactly, and it's never really been a problem. Again, I don't have a whole lot of shifts. It's very easy to like just jump into the sidebar and know it's pretty obvious like the one I want. It's the only Dusk one in here. So I'm okay with that. All right, let's move on. Let's leave naming alone for now. A good name will always come to you, right? Like even just in the 5 minutes, like I already kind of leaned back to this. So let's let it marinate, right? Let's give it some time. Normally if you give things time with naming, you'll land on the right one better than like banging your head against the wall for an hour. Okay, I think with the last little bit today, I don't want to make these too long. The last little bit today, let's kind of think through what's going to need to happen. What kind of individual tasks are probably going to, like, we'll get into the specifics of the actual code that changes. But like what's kind of like generally what's going to need to happen to make Dusk to Pest, to the Pest Browser Tests based on kind of what Nuno demonstrated, right? So, right away, we know that we'll probably need to bump your Pest version, right? Because this is in v4 only. Now, hopefully, the Pest v3 to v4 upgrade is either non-breaking or they have an internal tool that maybe helps, right? Because I don't want this shift to be responsible for that as well. So this might not even be a bump. This might simply be a check Pest version. It may simply be a requirement of this converter that you're already running Pest v4. So we probably at least want to check just here to make sure the requirements are met. So we'll do like check for Pest v4, right? What we will probably need to do though is, I think, again, this might be included with Pest somehow, but my guess is there's probably some kind of like npm playwright, I think it's playwright package. So it's like add playwright package to npm. I don't know. I'm just, again, I'm coming up with like kind of things here. I'm going to do some research on this, but like this is kind of how we're going to get started. We're going to go in, we're going to make sure you're running Pest v4. If not, you know, the shift will fail. The UI will tell you on the website, you know, hey, you didn't have the requirement. Go ahead and do that. We're going to add the package, the playwright package to npm. In the same regards, we'll remove Laravel Dusk, right? We're not going to need that anymore. Now, the other thing, kind of to this point though, you don't have here. This is an important reason also why I'm willing to make this shift. From a DX perspective, I wouldn't build this shift if it required you to move to Pest, because some people are opinionated about which test they use. The reason I'm willing to make this is because Pest can run side by side with a PHP unit test suite. In addition, if you have Dusk tests, you are already running a separate command to run the Dusk tests in isolation. The Dusk tests do not automatically run. They're already separated. So the point is, in Laravel Shift, for example, in the website, in the Laravel application, I have PHP unit tests and I have Dusk tests, right? I know they're PHP unit as well, but I'm saying I have my application tests, and then I have a Dusk test suite, and they're already running separately. So the ultimate point I'm kind of driving at here is I'm willing to kind of make the shift because you don't have to already be running Pest, actually. Check for v4 or that Pest is not installed, right? That's kind of the loophole here. Because if you're just running Dusk with PHP unit and you don't have Pest at all, you're still okay. You can actually convert to Dusk. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate that when this is done by dog fooding this shift on the Laravel Shift codebase to see if I can run them and ensure that I can run them all side by side. So the point is if you don't even have Pest, if you have Pest installed, then it has to be v4. If you don't have it installed, then it will install v4 and it's going to remove, you know, Laravel Dusk and instead kind of drop in Pest v4. The beauty is again, because the tests are run separately, we can keep everything separate. So there's no like additional overhead. You're just swapping one for another. You're not like taking your whole test suite and having to convert to Pest, because I don't want to do that. That's not what this is going to do, is the biggest point here. That is not what this is going to do. It's just going to, in isolation, take Dusk and make those tests Pest Browser Tests. It will not convert your existing application test suite. So there's actually not this is not required unless Pest is already installed. So it's kind of like, if Pest is installed, ensure Pest v4, right? So yeah, so let's do that. And then here we'll basically remove Dusk and add Pest PHP Pest if necessary, right? Okay, so that's kind of what this will do. So we're basically like, we've got a task here to just bump all the dependencies. And all of this might end up being a single task. But we basically bump dependencies. That's probably what we're going to need to do. Then, this is where it's going to kind of be like a pipe and filter systematic approach, where it's probably not, the tasks will actually not be in isolation, but to not have the tasks be incredibly big, this is where I might have like very specific Dusk converter tasks. And I kind of did this with the Laravel 11 shift 2. Generally speaking, when we looked at the Laravel 12 shift earlier, a lot of those were isolated. They'll make a code change and they'll actually make a commit with it. Sometimes, again, this is a pipeline. There's no requirement that the commit happens, within each task. It's okay if one task kind of leaves your application in a certain state and then the next task picks up to do something else. So the point I'm making here is that what we're going to need to do to get you away from Dusk is we'll first need to convert the test. So we'll need to convert the PHP unit skeleton. Is kind of like, that's kind of the biggest thing, right? Because these will need to be Pest tests to run. So we'll have to convert the PHP unit skeleton to, the functional, the description, the spec, right? Kind of that spec syntax. So to Pest, we'll call it skeleton. It doesn't really have a skeleton, but that spec-based testing where it's like whatever, very functional, right? So we'll have to convert that first. Now this isn't necessarily going to convert the individual Dusk API, like the actual method calls, but we'll at least need the skeleton converted. We'll also probably need to remove core Dusk files. We'll just call this swap core files. So this is like, this is maybe like the Dusk test case or whatever that PHP file is at the top, etc. So we might need to add like a pest.php. It all just depends on kind of each system, right? So it's like pest.php. I don't know what core files get swapped out yet. This is going to require, again, reviewing the documentation, probably asking Nuno a couple questions. Okay, so then after we do that, then it's kind of like convert API. That'll be the biggest thing. And again, these are pretty large, so these may end up being smaller tasks. And then the only other thing I could think of off the top of my head right now, again, these are huge, right? These are going to be pretty easy to build. We'll get cooking with these pretty easily. We could even probably build some of those right now. But I'm going to try to keep these about 45 minutes. So let's keep these under an hour. So yeah, we're getting close. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do, I think the nice thing to do would be to convert any test runners, right? So this would be like anywhere you're saying, like if you have CI in your application, anywhere you're saying PHP Artisan Dusk, it would be nice to swap that out, right? With whatever the new command is. At a minimum to detect it and comment on it that, hey, we see you have a Dusk CI build, you can get rid of that now, and here's kind of the one you can use. So it might just be a simple copy paste from the documentation. Again, Nuno sent over some early access to the docs. So again, I'm gonna take a look at those things, and we'll bring those up in a future stream to kind of see what it looks like. If I can convert that too, then I would love to make that part of this. Again, Shift's goal is to always be, above and beyond thorough, right? So if I can convert the test runners, great. If not, at the minimum, I would comment, hey, I see you're using PHP Artisan Dusk, in this YAML file. You'll probably want to go check the docs and convert it to this to run, the Pest Browser Tests. So, and then finally, any miscellaneous, it'll probably just be some cleanup. I might run the formatter or something just to make sure that in the process of converting this code, it matches, the final output matches your bit there, right? So, I think at a high level, this is pretty good. These with the dots are pretty, they're pretty open-ended. This is going to require some reading and understanding of how the Pest Browser Tests are actually set up. Let's just take a quick look at the Pest Converter. Oh yeah, see, look at that PHP unit too. I'm very specific here, the direction again. Dusk to Pest Browser Test Converter. Okay. So let's look at Pest. Yeah, see, okay. Here's kind of an example of where, so same thing, check requirements, dependencies, base class, those core files, right? And then we copy the tests, lifestyle. So here's kind of more where we're doing the pipeline, where finally we commit. See, we actually have a task here to commit the actual test cases. So pretty much this whole block is actually doing all of the code conversion. I just broke them up into isolated things where I copy the tasks, I convert your lifecycle methods, then I convert your test methods, then I swap data providers, then I bring over your helper methods. Class to script is probably stripping out the class stuff and making it functions instead. So yeah, some of this might actually end up being able to be reused from the Pest Converter. Because the Pest Converter is going to take a PHP unit test and make it Pest, which is exactly what we're kind of doing here, right? So it's kind of like leverage. So let's just see if we can leverage anything from, or well, not anything, it's leverage tasks from Pest Converter. Oops. So yeah, there might be an opportunity again to take those atomic classes and just rerun them here, but somehow isolate them to just the Dusk test case folder, right? And then I would have a custom task here that would bring those over. So I think that's what I'm going to do offline. Offline, I'm going to read a little bit about, are there any core files? I'm not going to worry about the API just yet, or the test runners. This is kind of gets into Thursday and Friday and whatever. I think tomorrow's goal is to probably build these first 3 or 4 tasks. I don't think that would take very long, 20 minutes, famous last words. And then maybe we'll kind of figure out, we'll start to build a test fixture of like a very simple, maybe from the docs, he has an example of here's before and after. And that'll drive out the test suite and the first test, and we might just end on a failing test. And that might be Thursday. I think Thursday will be how much of the Pest Converter can we use to kind of do this task, do this ... big thing. Because once that's done, the swapping of the core file, the swapping of the API is really just, that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of parsing of individual methods, but it's nothing, crazy. So yeah, it's tedious. It's tedious is what it is. It's not crazy. It's just tedious. So, okay, good stream. 420 people. Holy cow. Biggest stream yet. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow. Same time, same place.